This is the portrait of a killer. Hurricane Gilbert is ashore now just south of Brownsville, Texas, pounding the coast with fierce winds, high tides, and heavy rains. It's the latest chapter in a week-long, 2,000-mile rampage across the Caribbean and Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula that has left at least 50 people dead. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. Mexico gets the worst. Texas is being hard hit. Tornadoes as far east as Alabama. Hurricane Gilbert slammed into land this evening, its eye crossing the Mexican coast, about 110 miles due south of Brownsville, Texas. The storm is packing winds of more than 130 miles an hour. It is expected to continue for quite a while on a west-northwest course. John Blackstone is in South Texas as they face the fury.
With wind and rain and fury, Hurricane Gilbert swept into South Texas. Brownsville, a city of 110,000, seemed deserted, boarded up and braced against the storm. Even before Brownsville felt Gilbert's full force, it was hit by tornadoes spawned by the hurricane's fierce winds.
Everybody seems to be all right over there.
Oh, damn.
Disaster officials estimated 25,000 people here could end up in emergency shelters. Many low-lying coastal towns have come to accept their fate.
It goes under 3 or 4 times a year, so the people right in here are kind of used to this happening anyway.
Up the coast in Corpus Christi, some were caught in traffic jams as they moved inland. Others stayed close to the coast, seemingly fascinated by the coming storm. In Galveston, further away from Gilbert Center, officials made a controversial decision to evacuate the city of 63,000 last night. But almost half the residents ignored the advice in light of indications Gilbert was not heading directly toward Galveston.
Hey, you worried about the storm? Hell no.
I'd rather make an error towards public safety than make an error and wake up and there are 5,000 lives lost.
But now, uncertainty about Gilbert's destination is gone. As the storm crashes ashore, the uncertainty that remains is the scale of its destruction. John Blackstone, CBS News, Galveston.
There are about 5,000 residents in Port Isabel, a small town on South Padre Island off the Texas coast. As the hurricane started coming in, police made efforts to evacuate everybody. Bob McNamara looks at how that went.
While heavy seas and vicious winds battered the evacuated South Padre Island late today, 3 miles away, Port Isabel took a pounding too. But there was another problem here. People who wouldn't leave.
Okay, ma'am.
Like Perry Minicle, trying to phone friends in the howling wind, or at a trailer park where John Miller was staying behind.
Well, I figure if I'm going to go, I can go in a bed in Dallas, Texas. I mean, if I'm going to go. If I'm not going to go, I might as well be here. Yeah. Saves me the trip back, you know.
They feel as though that this is their property and they've been here all their life, and why should a storm or anything, for that matter, make them leave?
For the Port Isabel city manager, it would be a long day. Some people not only staying, others trying to return home.
It's really picking up.
The storm is, but what are all these cars doing?
A lot of them want to go back in, check their houses.
But you're not letting them, are you?
No, sir.
Okay.
It is losing the shrimp fishing industry that Port Isabel thrives on that worries this town most. And A.T. Galloway was allowed one last look at his boats.
It'll take care of itself. That's all you can do. Do the best you can and keep your fingers crossed and say a little prayer.
Port Isabel thought itself better prepared to face Hurricane Gilbert than most other Gulf towns. Pleasure boats were stacked in the streets, and the main street since last night has been empty. But as evening and the hurricane-force winds moved closer, concern deepened for those staying with the storm. Police Chief Lorenzo Rosales making one last plea.
Well, because we're getting ready to take off and we don't want to leave anybody behind, W.
But too proud or stubborn to leave, almost 24 stayed, and now they and the town are alone with the storm. Bob McNamara, CBS News, Port Isabel, Texas.
While the heart of the hurricane, the worst of it, stabbed into the sparsely populated upper Mexican coast, thousands of Texans had wisely already fled from homes in low-lying areas, turning communities into ghost towns. But in Corpus Christi, correspondent Peter Van Sant found, as usual, some people simply prepared to stand and wait.
They've been posing for family pictures by the bay and sitting out on their front porches. Corpus Christi residents are ready and waiting for Hurricane Gilbert's fury, but so far it hasn't arrived.
This wind isn't too bad for you?
Oh, hell no. We go through this in the wintertime.
Heavenly Father, we are confident you will grant
At a nearby
us whatever we
church,
ask for,
worshipers gave
according to your
thanks.
If it does not decide to take a northerly course, I think we will be very blessed.
More than 3,000 people spent the day in shelters, but after hours of calm winds, some headed home.
Thanks a lot for everything. Yes, ma'am.
But most are still worried. They know how quickly the weather can change.
You know, I don't plan on going nowhere. I just plan on staying here until they say it's okay to leave.
Outside of Corpus Christi's sheltered harbor, Hurricane Gilbert is churning up the Gulf. More than 400 homes have been evacuated, and some coastal businesses have been flooded.
This is North Padre Island. All escape routes have now been cut off by rising storm waters. Despite warnings, a number of residents here have decided to stay and try to ride out the storm.
The adventure of it, the fun of it, seeing the storm.
But it could cost your life.
Well, tie myself to a palm tree.
Being down and seeing that water, seeing it break over the seawall down there now, I wouldn't want to be here.
Police have been patrolling evacuated areas amid reports of some scattered looting.
We have had a couple of apprehensions regarding looters. We had 2 last night. We're anticipating some more.
Tonight, a steady downpour has moved into the city, but most Corpus Christi residents believe that this time around, their city has sidestepped disaster. Peter Van Sant, CBS News, Corpus Christi, Texas.
CBS News correspondent Faith Daniels has been out and about and moving around in Brownsville, Texas tonight. I talked with her just a few minutes ago. Faith, I think it's hard for some people to understand how strange and eerie, how come and go hurricanes can be. For example, right now it doesn't look that bad in Brownsville.
No, it really comes in waves. We'll have a strong period of rain and high winds, followed by amazing calm, particularly during the night. It was almost balmy, if you will. Then the winds would start to kick up again, and it would start all over again.
And Faith, among the things you have seen and heard, what impressed you the most? What sticks in your mind the most?
Going into those shelters and seeing those kids, particularly the young ones, not understanding what's going on, sensing the fear and the anxiety on their parents' faces, and not knowing quite how to deal with that. There are 8,000 to 10,000 people in these shelters here. Some of them have crossed the border from Mexico. And especially for the young ones, this is the first time they've been faced with anything like this.
The hurricane's killer winds are not the only threat to life and property. Equally dangerous is the so-called storm surge. That's a phenomenon which can be compared to a tidal wave, sort of. The surge is an ocean wave which becomes a kind of moving wall up to 25 feet high. Some have been known to be higher. The surge washes over low-lying land like a bulldozer. The storm surge is created by the raising of a column of ocean water under the low-pressure eye of the hurricane and by the violent winds swirling around, counterclockwise, the eye. Those winds may hold the key to the day's developments. The eye of Gilbert coming ashore on the Mexican coast just south of Brownsville, Texas, and thus the greatest danger may be, as it usually is, in the northern sector of the whole hurricane, an area that includes Brownsville. Hurricane winds frequently spawn tornadoes. In 1967, Hurricane Beulah produced 115 tornadoes during 5 days in Texas. The major wind damage from this hurricane is much more likely to come from the hurricane itself, not from the tornadoes, although the tornadoes are a danger. And what any hurricane spawns is a lot of questions. Where will it go? Where will the big rain hit? Will it return to the ocean? Correspondent Bernard Goldberg is at the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables, Florida. And just a few moments ago, I talked with him about the hurricane's future activity.
Well, Dan, first of all, they're saying that Gilbert is like a spinning top, and it's going to take some time before it spins all the way down. Now, let me give you those numbers. Hurricane force winds over parts of Mexico for the next 6 to 8 hours. Hurricane force winds over parts of Texas could last up until about midnight. Heavy rains, this is important, heavy rains for the next 24 to 36 hours. They're worried about more tornadoes. They're worried, of course, about flooding. But it may not be too early, Dan, to start looking for the silver lining in all of this. The forecasters say that the hurricane is going to move on through Texas, into Oklahoma, and then into the Midwest. Not torrential rains, but as one person around here put it, a good, healthy rain. Now, if that happens, that could be very good news for the farmers who've been suffering through the summer's drought.
And when will the hurricane finally fizzle?
Well, the worst of it is going to be over the next 24 to 36 hours, but the rains could actually continue into the middle of next week and actually fizzle out all the way up into Canada.
Thanks, Bernie. Why was this originally called potentially the hurricane of the century? Because at one time its winds were gusting to above 200 miles an hour, because it was so many hundreds of miles in size, and because it drove the barometer so low. Normal barometric pressure at sea level is 29.92. The lowest ever officially recorded is believed to be 25.69, typhoon tip 1979. Gilbert's 26.13, officially recorded in the early stages, is the lowest ever recorded around North America, and that's why the Weather Bureau was so worried. The barometric pressure of the hurricane at last report, 28.17. It never regained its worst full force after hitting the Yucatan and never made its expected turn north in the open Gulf after that. Coming up next here on the CBS Evening News, the hurricane bores into Mexico, where many communities had little warning.
Women lost weight at Diet Center. If you want to lose weight, call the weight loss professionals at Diet Center.
This hammer is twice as strong as this hammer. Tums EX is twice as strong as Rolaids, so Tums neutralizes twice the stomach acid. Tums EX, twice as strong as Rolaids.
No one knows I just got dentures, and I don't want anything to blow it.
Fixodent and forget it. Fixodent helps fix loose spots for a strong hold that lasts longer than any leading cream. Use Fixodent and forget it.
The making of freeze-dried Taster's Choice coffee. Search the world for the finest coffee beans. Grind them. And at the peak of freshness, brew the richest, most aromatic coffee you can brew. Then freeze it. Freeze-drying locks in the fresh brewed aroma and flavor until you release it. For a truly superior cup of coffee, the choice for taste is Taster's Choice.
Taste it.
At least 50 deaths in the Caribbean and on the Yucatan. Then Hurricane Gilbert was linked to at least 8 deaths in Mexico by the time the storm made its crash landing there today. And Christine Negroni reports there wasn't much the rural poor could do to avoid the hurricane's wrath.
Even before the people were ready, the wind and rain began, drenching Mexico's Gulf Coast from Matamoros to Tampico. In the village of Tres Palos, Mayor Hector Vargas went door to door, inviting his constituents to ride out the storm with neighbors whose houses are more secure. But as Gilbert bears down on this tiny community, there's little anyone can do to protect themselves. Rancher Luis Quintanilla is frightened. He says he's never seen a hurricane before. Quintanilla has done what he can do. He secured his roof with ropes. But no one is boarding up windows in Tres Palos. There's little glass to break, and no supplies anyway. And there's no radio in Quintanilla's house, no information about when Gilbert will hit or what will happen. But Quintanilla does know what he'll be doing tonight. He'll be asking God for help and protection, and many others along the Mexican coast will be doing the same. Christine Negroni, CBS News, Tres Palos, Mexico.
Here in Reynosa, just hours before the storm, stores were still open for business, people were out on the streets. And in little neighborhoods like Colonia Beate, the Martin Valdivia family plans to tough it out inside their just-built home. But they fear the fury of Gilbert will do more than rip cinder block walls.
We are worried because of the children, because of, I don't know what's going to happen.
If the windows break, the glasses will
They'll hurt you.
hurt us.
The Valdivias, like their other neighbors, have survived 7 hurricanes and floods that twice washed away their home. For now, it is time for children to carry Grandma's sewing machine to higher ground. with a stockpile of storm food, chili beans, sardines, and cornflakes. For so many here too poor to move, Hurricane Gilbert is just the latest among risks to hard living along the Mexican Gulf Coast. Frank Courier, CBS News, Reynosa, Mexico.
Noisy 4-year-olds, an absent assistant, and Susan Macy is left with a headache that's going from bad to worse. That's why her next move is to Metaprin. Metaprin has the same medicine as Motrin, and nothing's proven faster for relief of headache pain or any kind of pain. It's also gentler to your stomach than aspirin. Metaprin works fast when you haven't got time for the pain.
AT&T has just made Watts a whole new ballgame for any size business. Pick from a lineup of plans that give you call detail, distance-sensitive pricing, and major league discounts, even on international and AT&T card calls. If you thought AT&T Watts had just one pitch, now it's a whole new ballgame.
Now for indigestion, gas, introducing new Extra Strength Malox Plus. It neutralizes more than any leading antacid and dissolves gas. Nobody does as much as new Extra Strength Malox Plus.
Grandpa, you can do better than the old-fashioned Quaker Oats.
But who?
Total oatmeal has 10 times the vitamin and mineral nutrition. See, Grandpa, what you thought was in here is really in here.
If it's total oatmeal, it's total nutrition.
Mikhail Gorbachev, who's politicking in Siberia, today came out with a 7-point proposal for major military cutbacks in Asia and the Pacific. CBS News Pentagon correspondent David Martin reports the package was received with some skepticism in Washington.
Mikhail Gorbachev made another of his attention-getting arms control proposals today, including an offer to close the old U.S., now Soviet base at Cam Ranh Bay in Vietnam if the U.S. will vacate its bases in the Philippines. The president seems surprised.
Certainly, we want to do anything we can to help bring about a better relationship between our two countries. But as I have frequently said to him, trust everybody, but cut the cards.
Gorbachev's offer seemed timed to coincide with the deadlock in negotiations between the U.S. and the Philippines over continued access to Clark Air Force Base and the Subic Bay Naval Base. Assistant Defense Secretary Richard Armitage called it trading a jack for 4 kings.
Cam Ranh and the Philippine bases are not equal in any respect. It's very poor trade for us. We should not really consider that seriously.
Cam Ranh Bay is the largest Soviet naval base outside the Soviet Union, but it is much more expendable than Subic Bay and Clark Air Force Base, which are the linchpins of U.S. military operations in the Pacific.
It would be a strategic decision on our part of much greater significance toward our basic outlook on our world commitments than it would be on the part of the Soviet Union.
Gorbachev also proposed turning this controversial radar station at Krasnoyarsk, which the U.S. says is a violation of the ABM Treaty, into an international space center. The State Department quickly rejected the proposal, calling it a step backward because it would allow the Soviets to complete construction of a radar the U.S. says must be dismantled. Gorbachev probably didn't expect the Reagan administration to go along, but once again he has put the U.S. in the position of being the one to say no on arms control. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
The communist government of Poland said tonight it will open full-scale talks on the country's future with the Solidarity Union next month. The negotiations were scheduled after 2 days of preliminary talks between the government and Solidarity leader Lech Wałęsa. Tonight, Wałęsa said they made progress, but he said he will not budge from his key demand for re-legalization of the Union. With a ceasefire appearing to hold in the Persian Gulf, President Reagan has reportedly decided to reduce the level of protection for Kuwaiti tankers flying the American flag. Pentagon correspondent David Martin reports tonight that under this new policy, U.S. warships would no longer escort the tankers in World War II-type convoys, but simply stay within visual range. These new rules will enable the U.S. to pull one warship out of the Gulf and cut back on aerial patrols. The joint effort by the United States and Vietnam to locate Americans missing in action is back on track. Defense Secretary Carlucci made the announcement at a Capitol Hill ceremony marking National POW MIA Recognition Day. He said the search operation is now set to begin September 25th, a week from Sunday. 2,393 U.S. troops are still unaccounted for in Southeast Asia.
Why do you take aspirin more than once a week?
Because my doctor told me to take one every day. You see, a few years ago, I had a heart attack. So I'm on a regimen of exercise, a healthy diet, and a tri-buffered bufferin every day.
If you've had a heart attack, ask your doctor about new tri-buffered bufferin. It's 100% aspirin, plus 3 buffers that help protect against stomach upset plain aspirin can cause.
Bufferin's a part of my life now.
New tri-buffered bufferin. Ask your doctor about it.
What's for breakfast, my pet?
Nut and honey.
Hey, that's not nut and honey. Those are biscuits.
Right, nut and honey biscuits.
You mean there's nothing in those biscuits, honey?
No, honey, I mean there's nut and honey in the biscuits, honey.
So where's the nut and honey?
In the biscuit.
In the biscuit?
Introducing new Nut and Honey Crunch Biscuits. Wholesome shredded wheat with that special nut and honey taste inside.
Hey, Wanda, there is something in this biscuit.
Kellogg's Nut and Honey. Now in flakes or biscuits. Crunch.
AT&T has just made Watts a whole new ballgame for any size business. Pick from a lineup of plans that give you call detail, distance-sensitive pricing, and major league discounts, even on international and AT&T card calls. If you thought AT&T Watts had just one pitch, now it's a whole new ballgame.
Vice President and candidate George Bush held his first news conference in 2 weeks today and made a candid admission. He said his meetings with journalists are infrequent because his own aides are terrified he will bungle an answer. The fears are not unfounded. As correspondent Eric Ingberg reports, the Bush-Quayle campaign has been plagued by embarrassing slips of the tongue and just plain misstatements of the facts.
George Bush makes no bones about it. Some of his own aides cringe when he holds a news conference.
It's just some lower-level hand-wringers who think I'm going to screw it up.
While he's shown a new confidence on the stump, Bush's legendary ability to mangle syntax and facts while ad-libbing remains a source of worry to his advisors. Sometimes it's just a silly slip.
10 days before I was sworn in as President of the United States.
Sometimes it's more embarrassing, as when he tried today to voice opposition to any form of intolerance.
I hope I stand for anti-bigotry, anti-Semitism, anti-racism.
Bush said later it was obvious he meant he opposes anti-Semitism. Perhaps, but his TV handlers who remember Pearl Harbor know Michael Dukakis could exploit such a mistake if it happened in a debate. On occasion, the fractured facts have a partisan tang.
Massachusetts has lost 26,000 jobs since 1983.
Wrong. Massachusetts lost that many manufacturing jobs while actually gaining 400,000 total jobs. Can it be catching? Dan Quayle discussing the Nazi Holocaust.
It was an obscene period in our nation's history.
Whose history?
No, not our nation's, but in World War II. Right. I mean, we all lived in this century. I didn't live in this century, but in this century's history.
The Bush TV advisor is aware that otherwise inane mistakes can wreck a leadership image overnight. We'll keep Bush close to home next week to prepare for the TV showdown with Dukakis. Eric Engberg, CBS News, Findlay, Ohio.
Last night on this broadcast, CBS News medical correspondent Susan Spencer reported on the debate raging over the use of tissue from intentionally aborted fetuses for medical research. Today, a federal advisory panel made a preliminary recommendation that such research get U.S. government backing. NASA announced today it will launch Space Shuttle Discovery on Thursday, September 29th, the first U.S. manned space flight since the Challenger disaster, now less than 2 weeks away.
Looking for whole wheat total?
Special K.
Hope you're hungry, because you'll need almost 3 boxes of Special K to equal the vitamin and mineral nutrition in just 1 box of total.
Maybe grape nuts.
You'll have to put away 4 boxes.
Okay. Shredded wheat.
12 boxes. Total, 1 bowl, 100%. No other cereal has more vitamin and mineral nutrition.
I think I'll have... Total, sweetheart. Total.
If it's whole wheat total, it's total nutrition.
Honey, should we take the other car?
I'd rather not. Ford Escort now offers an attractive new design, plus fuel injection and a 660 powertrain warranty. In fact, the redesigned Ford Escort may make your other car seem considerably less attractive.
Honey, aren't we ever going to take the other car?
Nope. The world's best-selling car just keeps looking better all the time.
Now get a $500 cash bonus on 88.5 Ford Escorts.
Mom sure made life easier. Mine did. Like another mom, Phillips Milk of Magnesia. Phillips Mom helps your body work naturally for easy overnight relief. Even has this convenient dosage cup. Nobody treats you better than Mom.
How could Thompson's water seal be improved? It's great already. Well, Thompson's could apply itself, but we've improved Thompson's with 50% more active ingredients for more waterproofing power on wood, brick, and concrete. Thompson's, the first name and lasting protection.
As Bernard Goldberg reported, the hurricane is going to have far-reaching weather effects, but whatever the future course of the hurricane, it will be recalled in terror in Jamaica and the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. Deborah Potter looks now at the eerie transformation Hurricane Gilbert shaped in Cancun's tourist country.
Almost 3 days after the storm, much of the Yucatan is still cut off from the outside world. While tourists complained about the conditions, residents left homeless by the hurricane took shelter in school buildings. The Vega family, all 12 of them, crowded into this classroom and set up a makeshift kitchen, trying to make the best of it. American tourists trying to get out exchanged scraps of information and blamed their own government for not doing more to help.
The American consulate won't even talk to anybody. They shut down.
Yeah, that stinks. Tourism is the mainstay of the Cancun economy, and despite the damage, those businesses that could got right back in business. On the resort beaches, a few visitors ignored the damage around them and enjoyed the sun and surf after weathering the storm. At the local hospital, 5 babies were born into a stormy world, while 3 generations of the Farias family took shelter. When it was over, tens of thousands of people were homeless, and damage was in the millions of dollars. A Cuban fishing boat wound up in what used to be a beachfront patio. Rebuilding will take months, but most people here say they're just grateful to be alive. Deborah Potter, CBS News, Cancun.
And that's the CBS Evening News. Bob Schieffer will be here tomorrow. Tonight, we'll be keeping you advised of major hurricane developments through the evening, and then we'll have a special broadcast on the hurricane at 11:30, 10:30 Central Time. Until then, Dan Rather.
Showdown in Death Valley. 10th-ranked Florida State takes on the 3rd-ranked Tigers of Clemson tomorrow on CBS Sports.
This is CBS.
Coming up on Eyewitness News, Hurricane Gilbert has stormed ashore on the Texas coast at this hour. We'll have the latest up-to-the-minute information on the storm's progress. A small Tennessee town is in shock tonight after the brutal murder of a high school senior. We'll have a report. And it's happened more than once. Water problems at an apartment complex fire. We'll tell you what's being done about it. Those stories and the Blue Raiders' Saturday strategy. Eyewitness News is next.